let's get this started. Woo! Welcome everyone to ThursdAI, December 26th. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with Weights and Biases. I'm also your host for today. Welcome to the last show of ThursdAI this year, the last show in 2024. I'm very excited about this one because we also have some incredible open source breaking news as we start the show just from this morning, as I always love breaking news, as you guys know. We also have my co-host here with me, Wolfram, Raven Wolf. Wolfram, say welcome to the folks.
Hello, everyone. Hope you had a great Xmas or whatever you celebrate, if you celebrate.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone. Let's pause this music. Merry Christmas, everyone. Whoever celebrates Christmukkah this year, also on the same day, Hanukkah and Christmas. For those of you who do this, today's, at least for me, where I am, is the second candle. I also want to acknowledge that other co-hosts here, Weave from Weights and Biases. Thank you, Weights and Biases, for letting me host the show for this whole year. This is the second year we're doing this. Actually, second anniversary is coming up in March. Folks who are here with us in the space, the square, very colorful Weave handle here. Please go give that one a follow. This is the reason why the show still exists here on Space and on X. Everywhere else. I think we're also streaming everywhere else. However, today our format is audio only. No visual representations. Folks who have been sitting in spaces all this time and are used to this format, we're in audio only. So if you're listening to us live or tuning in from the car, on your way to work next week or next year, or even. So if you're listening to us from the future, welcome to ThursdAI. We're excited to have you. We're going to have multiple friends, hopefully from the show, jump on and tell us about what they found exciting this year. Actually, I think that I'm very open to just opening up at the end of this episode and just have a conversation with a bunch of folks as well. Let me invite a friend of mine here. I'm inviting another friend of mine here and another friend of mine here. I'm just going to invite a bunch of friends because this is the last year celebration basically to the stage. And I want to open up with just saying this. It's been an incredible year for AI. Incredible year. I've been doing, this is like the second year I'm doing this. I've re-listened to the last year's recap show. I don't know if you guys natively understand this, but the acceleration we're on is batshit insane. It's absolutely batshit insane. Just comparing to last year is really hard. And I also went and recapped kind of our predictions from last year, which we'll do at also the second part of the show. It's really hard to also try to predict what's going to happen in next year. The predictions the folks did on the show, and mind you, the folks who tune to the show are folks who know everything that has to be known from week to week, right? So folks who tune to ThursdAI want to know the latest and greatest, the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of open source, etc. The predictions the folks made on the show were small compared to what we got eventually. It was really funny. And so, yeah, it's been an incredibly eventful year in AI. And all of this to come. I will just remind you that if you do want to help and support the show, the best way to do is reshare our stream. So our airwaves is going to go around the world as much as possible. So if you're listening to us live, go down to the bottom right of where there's comments there, participate in the show, give us comments as we go along. So we'll do a conversation. We share the actual kind of show link, the space link, so that people will find it, join our wherever we are. But also the show is recorded and then edited and then reposted on ThursdAI.news and everywhere where you get your podcasts. It would be dope if you send an episode as a, New Year's present to your friends who are about to get into AI and want to know about anything. Yeah, just send them. If you find it interesting, if you find it insightful, just send them. And so with that, I think it's about to get started. Also, I want to say hi to my friend Nistan here. What's up, Nistan?
Oh, okay. What's up?
Oh, I actually found that really funny from Sam Altman, that one. Yeah, how was your Christmas, man? Or do you guys not celebrate Christmas in Hanukkah or in Canada? Or is that like a month before? I don't remember.
No, it depends. Like a few years ago, the girl I brought home was Jewish, but then some years ago was Christian, so my parents actually did put up a Christmas tree.
Oh, nice. So, it's contextual. It's contextual. I love it. I love it. All right, folks. Yeah, it's all about the rituals. That's what I always say. I lit up candles yesterday. All right, folks. So I think that with this, I think we have a quorum to get started. But again, we'll have more folks joining us throughout the conversation. Again, big show. What we do usually is this kind of TLDR format. We run through everything that we have to talk about. I did not expect to have much news for the last week of the year. Folks are on Christmas vacation. OpenAI ended with their 12 days of whatever presents. Google's folks are on vacation. They finished with their release cycle, etc. I did not expect to have much news, but we do have them. So let's run to the TLDR section of everything that we will have to talk about. Then we're going to actually talk about them. And then on the second part of the show, we're going to try to do a TLDR for the whole year. I don't know. We'll do a yearly recap of, at least we'll try to run and see what are the big things that happened this year. Because again, as we run from week to week, it's really hard to it's really easy to lose sight of the big picture of just how much changed this year, right? We're going to try to do a yearly recap. We'll see. And folks, Nista and Wolfram, I sent you a link so you can do this with me. So hopefully you have this link open with you. We all can surround ourselves and run through this properly, and you guys can help me with it. So let's do a TLDR. Let's do a TLDR of everything that we have for this last week of 2024, which is a crazy last week. So I usually do it like this, right? This is it. This is the TLDR of the last week of AI news for 2024, December 26, 2024. This is everything that we're going to talk about on the show. We're going to start with open source, where we have huge breaking news from open source. We have two breaking news, actually. First of all, our friends from Qwen decided to leave us a Christmas present in the form of Qwen QVQ. If you guys remember Qwen Quill, which is spelled QWQ, that was a 30 billion something parameter model. This one is Qwen QVQ. It's a visual 72 billion parameter visual reasoning model from Qwen. As far as we know, this is the first and maybe only open source visual reasoning model. This is I think it's based on Qwen Vision 72B. Basically, it's a vision reasoning model. It's pretty cool. Wolfram, I know we've tested this out, so we're going to chat about this one. It was open source, I believe, also with some Apache license. We're going to chat about this one. It's awesome. Maybe we'll see if our friends from Qwen can make it. Maybe it's late. So that was cool. That was also dropped this week. We also saw Cog Agent 9B drop recently. Cog Agent was recently one of the better tools to actually control your machine from screenshots. So that beats Claude computer use on some tasks. So we're going to briefly mention that as well. And then, GoodFire released Ember, which is a mechanistic interpretation, MechInterp API. So basically, if you guys remember GoldenGate Claude, it's that for Llama. And basically everybody can find features. I really want to chat about this. That I find super cool. The work itself is not open source, but the fact that they are able to do that, whatever Anthropic did for GoldenGate Claude, and find those features and clamp those features, and you can actually play with them yourself, I find that super, super cool. I want to talk about Ember's mechanistic interpretation API. And the biggest news in open source dropped yesterday and honestly today, this morning. DeepSeek, the Whale Bros, aka Whale Bros from China, released DeepSeek version 3. In preview, it's a massive 658, I'm going to say this slowly again, 658 billion parameter model, MOE, with a whopping 256 expert. I believe that 8 experts are activated at each pass with one share, so 9 experts activated in each pass, but 256 experts overall. It's a massive MOE that requires, I think, 8 H200s to run or something crazy like this. And this open source, I really want to hit the breaking news button. I'm probably going to use it later. This massive open source dethrones Claude 3.5 on coding on multiple benchmarks. This is basically Claude at home. Not at home because nobody can run this. But this is massive news, folks. This is insane news from yesterday and today. Open source has caught up technically to GPT-4, to Gemini, to Claude, and it costs $6 million. That's what we know. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And then we definitely want to dive into this as much as possible in the open source. We're going to dedicate a good chunk of the show today because this is what it's all about. Great releases from open source this week. Then we're gonna skip to big companies and PIs, where if you guys follow the show, you probably know about OpenAI's O3. We concluded the last ThursdAI with getting vision. I believe this was the last thing that we got on Thursday last week. We got vision, and then we got tool use as well, I believe, on last Thursday. And then on Friday, on the last day of the 12 days of releases of OpenAI, they dropped a bomb on everyone. And basically, this bomb was called AGI question mark. Basically, OpenAI decided to come on the live stream. Sam Altman came and then said, hey, we are releasing early evaluations of this new model we call O3 and O3 Mini. And those evaluations, just at least for my feed and probably many folks who are tuning to the show feeds, just broke our collective brains completely because nobody expected Greg Comrade, also from the show, by the way, the president from ARC AGI, to show up and say, hey, this model basically won ARC AGI prize at, I want to say 75%. I don't remember the exact one. I have the eval at 87.5% on ARC AGI semi-private evaluation, including a insane 20. Anyway, we're going to get into the evals. I don't want to get too excited, but basically O3, the new reasoning model, which is the continuation from O1, from OpenAI, was revealed with evaluations that are absolutely insane, which got many people started thinking about whether or not this is AGI. We already had a show about O3. Actually, on Friday, we live reacted on Friday. We recorded the show, live reacted. Since then, we also saw everybody kind of comment on what O3 means, and we saw all of this. So definitely we need to talk about O3 because it's absolutely insane. Also because you go to, I don't know, I posted a tweet about this that went like crazy. You go to a bagel shop, you eat a lox bagel, and people don't know that O3 was released or like getting discussed, and AGI is almost here, and they just eat their lox bagel. Definitely we're going to talk about O3. Also, there's small news from XAI, the folks who have us promised Grok 3 by end of this year. Maybe today. I doubt it, though. Probably not this week. We'll see. But XAI raised another $6 billion. Another. So they already raised the $6 billion round a while ago. So this is another $6 billion to the coffers of XAI. They're well on their way to 200,000 H200s, which is going to be, they already have the biggest supercluster in the world, so this is going to be even more massive. So absolutely insane, and we're going to maybe talk about Grok and their plans. And also, there's a small recap of Google's releases, but nothing came from Google this week. The folks at Google are on a well-deserved break, and hopefully nothing comes today as well. We have plenty to talk about. In this week's Buzz, super quick, we have 2 events coming up in January that I want to tell you about so that you start to get planning. In the second week of January, we have one San Francisco event and one Seattle event. I'm going to be in both of them. I'm very excited. And we also have a new course coming up in Eval's course and participation from Paige Bailey, the great Paige Bailey from Deverell from Google, and Graham Newbig from All Hands AI, and we have an evals course, and it's free to sign up. And I'm going to add this link, and hopefully you guys will join our free evals course. It's going to be awesome. I already saw some previews, and definitely awesome. And basically all about evaluations, including our events as well. In vision and video, small potatoes, but Kling got an update. The model that competes or tries to compete with now VO2 and Sora and Haulio, yeah, and there's so many video models I can't remember them all. But Kling got a 1.6 update that seems pretty cool. In the voice and audio category, we also have some very interesting news. Hume, the company that released a emotive voice previously, released Octave, or at least announced Octave. I haven't seen a release, but they say it's a speech language model, which is a new term for me. But they claim it's a 3 billion parameter speech language model, and it has emergent capabilities like on-the-fly personalization and personality creation. It has all the characteristics of like advanced voice model. It can like mimic speaker's voice, personality, and it can copy your voice on the fly almost. It's pretty cool. It sounds pretty decent. And it's 3 billion parameters, just 3 billion parameters, not open source though. In the tools area, the last thing I want to call out is my dear friends from OpenRouter added a web search grounding, which is pretty cool. So every model on OpenRouter, which is pretty much every model, you can now go and add web grounding via EXA, and that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty much it of the news that we're going to talk about, but also we have last year's prediction and timeline in year in review. And the last thing this is the last thing that I want to chat about. This is TLDR. And now, Nistan and Wolfram, I know that I promised you a link, so let me just send you a link so we're all going to be on the same page. And let's get started. Anything that I missed, by the way, Wolfram and Nistan, while I was like running and gunning super quick?
I think that covers it. Didn't think of any you missed.
Yeah, nothing huge besides DeepSeek and O3. I think those are the main things that we need to cover. Folks in the audience, by the way, listening in, any huge thing that I've missed from this week? Oh, somebody asked what was the 3 billion parameter model with personalization? That was Hume's Octave. And yeah, we're gonna run through all of them again. This is only the TLDR. Nissan, go ahead.
Also, just really quick, I think 2 weeks ago, or maybe I wasn't on, we missed the update that DeepSeek 2.5 pushed, which was like the 12.10 update. Again, they messed up their version numbers, but that 12.10 was actually significant in terms of benchmarks. Like it was bumping everything up by 5 or something %. And I tried it from Bertowski's, I think he's in the audience. He makes the quantizations for it. So just search BARTOWSKI and then DeepSeek and then get whatever is the latest there, the 12.10, 1 to 10. And I tried that one and it was very good. So I think we missed that slight update that DeepSeek pushed to 12.5, and that was only 2 weeks ago. If you go on Hugging Face right now on DeepSeek, not version 3, version 2.5, it's only like 14 days old. But that one you can actually run even on a CPU, and it was very good. Anyway, I tried it; it was good.
Yep, but this was before the version 3, so definitely we're going to chat about version 3. I think version 3 already got to like the Explore tab, at least on my end for X. So let's talk about open source, folks. I think this is the next thing. Let's talk about open source AI. Open source AI, let's get it started. Let's get it started with open source AI. And I think we have smallish potatoes. Let's run through them super quick until we get to the main course. I think this is the way that I now love to do things. I want to start with Cog Agent 9B. And as I used to do, I'm going to add the stuff that I'm talking about to the top of the stage. Cog Agent was released, by the way, a while ago. So this is an updated version of Cog Agent. This is the 2024-1220, a bilingual GUI agent built on GLM. We talked about GLM for a while. This is a 9 billion parameter model of GLM. This is a visual language model that this is an agent that built on top of this visual language model that achieves a 85.4% on the screen spot evaluation compared to Claude Sonnet 83%. This is state-of-the-art model use of your computer based on just image perception. So very high resolution input and achieves very high scores. I think state-of-the-art scores as far as I'm looking at from Cog Agent. Very impressive. I haven't been able to run this, but I know that it's already implemented in a specific, I believe, Chinese tool. I wasn't able to register though and sign up for the actual tool and try it out. But the paper that they released was already existing. This seems to just be a new iteration on that kind of like paper and a new model. So same paper as previously, and but a new blog with 9 billion parameter model, and the model is on the Hugging Face as well. This one has 8,000 context lengths for memory, so memory for the previous steps as well. And I think the highlight here is the resolution has 1120 by 1120 resolution input. And then it has chain of thought reasoning steps like status and planning and action and operation, very similar to what we saw from computer use from Anthropic. I haven't seen it in the wild though, so all we can do is go by what they released on the project page, but it looks very interesting. Mr. You remember Cog VLM, right? We talked about Cog VLM before.
Yeah, I even ran it on my Mac, like the previous one. It actually wasn't that good. Like the resolution issue was still an issue, and because what happens with visual language models is they're only trained like on squares or on rectangles, like on a certain resolution. So even if you give it like your widescreen or ultra widescreen computer, it's gonna get squished down to that, and then the model has to guess just based on that. So I don't know if they've fix that on this because the previous one was not that good, but their model, like the LLM side, tend to be very good. 1120 by 1120 is a significant upgrade, and yeah, I'm going to try it out. Oh, apparently they also have a Cog Agent 18B, which is like an 11B language model and a 7B thing. It's getting up there. You're gonna need either a 3090, a 24 gig. You're gonna need 24 gigs of VRAM.
Yep. So this one is a 9 billion parameter, and this one. So apparently there's a demo app as well. I missed it. So GLMPC is the app that I missed. That's a Chinese app, but there's a Cog Agent demo app on GitHub that you can run on Sequoia. It's a Mac app. And it's a Gradio Mac app that runs the model likely, and you enable screen recording permissions. I would be very careful with this. Specifically, I would be very careful with this. I would encourage folks to be very careful with stuff like Anthropic computer use. Definitely that one comes with the Docker. I would be very careful with running something like this on your computer. Very, very, very carefully. I just got a very funny DM from somebody from Google saying, "Hey, I hear you like breaking news." Haha, not funny, folks, not today. So moving on from the small potatoes in the open source. So this is Cog VLM. Anything else? Wolfram, are you familiar with these models? Any comment on this? Or folks in the audience, are you familiar with Cog VLM? Have you tried the runner? Let us know with Cog Agent. Otherwise, we can move on, I think.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, so can't comment on that.
Alrighty. Last thing in the TLDR that I forgot, and I think it's worth talking about. It's a little bit outside of the kind of the ThursdAI news type thing, but I got a Christmas toy for my kid. It's an AI Christmas toy, and my post about this is blowing up right now. It's like crazy. Many people have comments about specific toys and AIs and kids, and I actually want to tell you guys the story as well because my kid does not really want the AI part of the story. It's very interesting. Yeah, I'll tell you all about this hopefully at the end of the show, but I'll definitely add this to the show notes. It's very interesting actually. As somebody whose title is an AI evangelist and whose kids have tried all of the AIs that are possible, this one is very interesting. All right, moving on in the open source. We're still in the open source. Somebody has to maintain order here on ThursdAI. GoodFire Ember is the next thing that I wanted to talk about. And I actually invited them to chat, but I forgot to send them a link, so they're not here. Ember is a new company that they offer mechanistic interpretation. Nista and Wolfram, would you guys want to try to give a definition of MechInterp while I go pull up the link to the audience?
I don't know. Wolfram? But people try to look at the end of the day, it is just yogurt, right?
I love this analogy. At least once more this year. Yeah, Nista, go ahead. Yogurt analogy. Hey.
Yeah, I say this analogy like 4 times a month. But it's like you're dumping in a bunch of information, and you have these like pools of digital yogurt, just like bumping the distribution of every token into a certain marinated section of the data, and then you end up with the next token. So it's not like they think and stuff. You're just marinating stuff. So when people try to do mechanistic interpretability, it's like they're trying to interpret the mind of the yogurt, and so you can see how that is a little bit hard, right? So in this case, what they did is, or at least what I think mostly they did, because it hasn't all been published, is they trained like 2 or more versions of Llama 3.3, and they have and I think they swap the layers on the fly, and then they just give you a slider. When you push that slider, some of the layers are uncensored, and you can get there's uncensored models on, like, it's still we're still a free world, thankfully. So you can get uncensored model. So yeah, so they swap around the layers. So you have 80 layers on Llama 70B, and that slider takes out the original ones and puts it the uncensored ones, and depending on how many it puts, you get a level of it being uncensored. And this is also what people thought that they were doing with the Claude, the GoldenGate bridge
Claude, yeah
model. But that was a little bit different, and that was a pretty long paper actually. But yeah, that was it in this case. So people are attempting to do some kind of interpretation, but then again, you're trying to mechanize yogurt. So
Yeah.
it is what it is.
But it works though. So let me try to sum up and recap like what I got from GoodFire. GoodFire is apparently either one of the first or the first API for open source models like Llama 70B. And I think they have 70B and 8B. Yeah. Llama 3.3 70B and Llama 3.1 8B. I'm looking at their UI. They have a hosted API where you can decide which features, they call them features, which is collections of model activations that you can clamp down on and have more of or less than. So you can say, I don't want this model to ever say a specific word or a concept, or I don't want this model to swear, or I don't want this model to ever be, I don't know, prompt injected, for example. That's one feature they're like very happy about and they did some research about. So basically trying to understand how the model thinks and then trying to get those understandings into a specific modeling that you can control via this API, which is very cool. They use sparse autoencoders, SAEs, to extract those features from the model activations. And these features represent meaningful concepts that emerge from this model's like processing, which is very cool. Like we're basically trying to understand like this yogurt's, in this analogy, this yogurt's thinking. And Ember allows the API for controllable behavior. You can adjust on the fly how many of these like parameters or features you can control on the fly, which is super cool. And also on their interface on the platform.goodfire.ui, you can basically play around with them on the fly and control them, like removing them and adding them. So for example, you can have the Llama model swear all the time or be like very racist or be not racist at all. And some of the research that they did was very interesting as well. They did some research that talked about how you can create other decision trees, for example, while using these things, or you can up jailbreak resistance by feature activations that like refuse jailbreak resistance or some stuff like this. It's very interesting research, and the fact that now it has access like via API and SDK, it's very cool. So they have a hosted version of Llama basically that its brain is open with the controls that you can control the brain. Basically, this is how I understand this. This is how I explain Ember. Super cool. So if you're into this and you want to play around with Llama, this doesn't require fine-tuning. And you can ask, basically the question that people are asking is, what is the difference between this and something like prompting? You can still prompt this model to like behave in this way. There's some differences, and this is like more native to the model, basically, is from what I understand. Pretty cool. And yeah, this is GoodFire Ember, and I think it's time for us to actually talk about the main thing. I have to use this. This is from today, folks. This is literally from today, so I have to use this breaking news button. We have breaking news from DeepSeek. Not breaking news in the middle of the show, but this is from this morning, so I'm allowed to use this at least once. I did not expect this to be as many releases this Thursday, so here we go, folks. We have breaking news in the open source. AI breaking news. Coming at you only on ThursdAI. Our breaking news for today comes from the most Chad Chinese company called DeepSeek AI, aka Whale Bros, aka Whale Bros. DeepSeek releases the instruct and base version of version 3 of DeepSeek. Version 3 of DeepSeek. DeepSeek has been around for a while. We've talked about DeepSeek a lot. DeepSeek v3 is the biggest leap forward in open source LLMs and AI that we've seen yet. This model is just absolutely incredible. And this model is now open sourced on the Hugging Face. Not that we can download it because it's a massive 671 billion parameters. 671 billion parameters. Just for comparison, the biggest like Llama model that we have in the open source that was dense, that was like 405B. This one is over 500 billion parameters. Like this pushes the boundaries. It's really up there. It's a mixture of experts with 37 billion activated. That's going to be, let me take a look. That's 256 experts. We're going to get to reactions like super quick. The evaluations are absolutely insane. This model matches Qwen. Sorry, this model matches Llama the 405B on multiple places and beats it on several other places, like MMLU Redux. This model beats and comes very close to Claude 3.5 Sonnet, the last one. So like 3.6 or whatever, the 3.5 new. Let's look at some evaluations and then let's talk about the model. Wolfram, Nistan, do you guys already looking at some stuff? You want to call out some evals that you found interesting?
I'm looking at their today's announcement right now.
Yeah.
I took a look at today. It's good. Look, sorry. A lot of people have criticism that it's too big, like 671 billion parameters. That means that to run it in 8-bit context, you're going to need 670 gigs of RAM or any kind of RAM, VRAM, RAM. So you're already like above the limit of what you get with that, because with 8 H100s, you end up with 640, more like 650 something gigs of RAM. So even if you have a whole rack of 8 H100s, you're not going to be able to run it. So that means you either have to move to H200s, which you really can't get a rack off, or the MI300s if you can get them to run. Same thing with H200s. But the thing that's important here is that in the end, if you're going to run this at scale and you're going to serve like a lot of customers with it, the amount of active parameters, which like the model is chewing on at the same time, is only 37 billion.
Mm-hmm.
The rest are just like hanging there in memory and just being picked dynamically with each layer. So that means it's actually going to be faster than people running Llama 70B overall. It's just the memory is going to be expensive, but to run it itself, the inference is going to be faster. Now, there are some other issues with KV cache activations for MOEs, but again, the moment you go at some kind of scale, those go away, and this does actually become more beneficial. So again, people are complaining because like you can't just even buy a box and pay for a box like $20 an hour or whatever it is and run it. You have to even think bigger infrastructure than that, which makes it pretty annoying. But these evals are pretty nuts, and like actually I believe them because I use their models. I see the differences that they make between each release. Yeah, we're gonna try and have it up for GitHub GG pretty soon. So, yeah.
Wolfram, yeah, we have also Qwen QVQ, and I think we're going to talk about Qwen QVQ in the vision area because this is kind of like a vision model. But I just want to talk about some evals specifically because this model gets just massive comparisons to Claude 3.5, which was considered still to this day, even though we have all three and everything to talk about, in the non-reasoning models, Claude was still considered like one of the best models. This model either matches Claude or beats it on multiple things. So it comes very close on MMLU Pro. This is, I think, like it beats GPT-4o. The last GPT-4o, the numbers were reported, it beats GPT-4o on MMLU Pro at 75 to Claude 78. It beats everybody else besides Claude on GPQA Diamond at 59.1, and we know GPQA Diamond is really, really hard. Claude is at 65. Math 500, it beats all the other models. It gets 90 at Math 500. Actually, don't know what Math 500 is. Oh, just Math. AIME, that's the one that like all of the reasoning models report, like AI competition math. It gets 39% on AIME, with Claude gets 16. And SWE Bench Verified, which is the software engineering kind of benchmark, it gets 42% to Claude's 50 and GPT-4o's 38. So it beats GPT basically in everything. And it comes close to Claude in many things, which is very impressive, including some things that it beats Claude at. I think that this is like absolutely ridiculous. Wolfram, what's your take? Were you already like getting the vibes from on this model?
Oh, definitely. The people are the sad thing is now we have the intelligence, but we lack the resources to run it.
Yeah.
So this could be Sonnet at home if we had a supercomputer at home. But the good thing is it's an MOE and there are methods to extract the individual experts from the MOE. We could create smaller versions with less experts, but they would need less resources. And if they keep some of the performance, that would be very interesting. And I'm sure we will see a lot of stuff. Like when you remember when Llama came out, people weren't able to really run it, especially the big version. So the community got around it and it became possible very quickly. And I expect this model to have the same pull because it's so good in the benchmarks and we all want Sonnet at home. And this is something where the community is probably making it possible, what is impossible for now. Because it's open, you can download it, you can modify it. it's actually not an open source model. Again, we don't even have an open source license for it. That's something we could talk about as well if you want.
Do we know the license actually?
Yeah. The license is on the model card, and it's a specific license agreement. It's very allowing.
Yeah.
But there are some exceptions, of course, like military use and stuff. That is ruled out, and it's not fully open source in that way. There are some other restrictions as well, what you can do with it. So it's not an open source license, it's open rights. In that way, you can download it, you can use it, but there are some restrictions, of course. So the code is MIT licensed, but the model itself is a specific agreement you have to agree to.
Yep.
But it's still one of the more lenient licenses, definitely, and more so than what others have, like the Qwen license, where you have a number of users restrictions and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's great. So it's the best thing we have right now, and now it's up to the community to make it work on more systems so we can really use it.
A couple of things, the more things to call out here is that compared to the big labs, DeepSeek trained this on, I think, 2000 H800s. Not H200s, H800s. And this is like an order of magnitude less than the big labs have. And I think I saw some estimations from A16Z that it cost them around $6 million to train this model. So like the price at the end of 2024, let's say this like properly so that we have this like checkpoint in time. At the end of 2024, the price for a frontier size model, even though like it's hard to run, etc., blah, 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 we'll get down to this, at FP8 mixed precision is around $6 million. If you have very talented team like DeepSeek team. It was trained on 0.8 trillion tokens, and this is the strongest open source base model that we currently have, including Instruct. We got two versions. We got the base version and Instruct version. Nistan, go ahead.
Yeah. I also tried the model itself. Again, Sonnet is still the best whenever it's not nerfed or the DevOps are down. Just putting it out there, and it got the questions right, like the very hard margin questions and stuff. You still notice that Sonnet, when it works well, actually gives you like nicer info. It can give you more code as well with the right prompting. But yeah, this is the closest thing to Sonnet at home, and you don't really have to like wait and mess around. Like it just does the thing, like it just inferences the right answer.
We can talk about speed as well. Speed,
complex questions, yeah.
Speed and pricing. Let's talk about speed and pricing, because now we're moving between the open source and the kind of the hosted version. Because yes, it's open source, or open weights, as Wolfram said. Yes, it's incredible in evals, and we can continue to talk about evals. By the way, this is the second model on Ader's benchmark result. It beats Claude on Ader benchmark. Live code bench, it gets like one of the top models that are not reasoning. There's like a bunch of other confirmations in the vibes that people ran through this, that it's the best non-reasoning LLM on like multiple ones. But downloading this is like 700 gigs just to download this model. And yesterday when I did the research, I looked at Hugging Face and there was like 0 downloads, because they released in the morning, and by the time that I did the recap for the show, it takes so long to download that Hugging Face just logged 0 downloads. I wonder how much it is now.
I think it just hasn't logged because quite a few people did grab it. Is there? Oh, the other thing is, for people that are downloading, don't download it yet, because there's no actual thing pushed to. I haven't checked this morning, but yesterday there's nothing pushed to Transformers library or LLama CPP to run this architecture. And people thought, oh, it's like a souped up version 2. No, it's like the routing is a bit different. There's some sigmoid. It went like from centroid to sigmoid on something. The architecture is a bit different enough that it needs, don't implement it for them, just wait for them to push the actual pull request to transformers and for it to get merged in before trying to quantize it and doing stuff with it. Even though the modeling code is somewhat similar to, because it's still like the same, like 2 plus 6 experts per layer routing, and there's still the expert pool. So the architecture is still similar to 2.5. Very advanced architecture for MOE. Like this is like a 2nd gen thing. It's not like a Mixtral or other stuff. Like
this is a lot of experts. Before. A lot of experts.
Yeah, and they have a pool of experts, and they get picked. Like there's 2 that go on every layer that are like static per that layer, and then they add another 4 or 6, and these 4 or 6 get dynamically picked from a pool of, it was like 50 something on version 2. But this is like a second gen. This is like a next gen architecture that only DeepSeek knows how to do. And it's also why you can't really make Frankensteins of this, because it's going to pick those layers dynamically from a pool. Anyway, whereas with previous MOEs, you could make a Frankenstein. You could just duplicate the layers and just go about your day, and you made the model. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Look, the economics of it only works at scale with this. Like, you're probably going to need 32 GPUs to actually serve it to customers, which is pretty. A lot of people are going to be annoyed by that, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. I also want to highlight that a few more things. So first of all, DeepSeek is obviously hosting this on their API. Their API is not versioned. So if you used DeepSeek before, now you're getting V3, and you're basically locked into the pricing of before until, I think they said February. And after February 8th, the pricing is going to go up. It's still going to be super cheap, right? So right now it's 14 cents per million tokens. It's going to go up to, wait, no, 1 second. Oh, yeah. I think right now is 14 cents, going to go up to 20 cents, 27 cents. And output is 28, is going to go to $1.10. Right, so like it's costing them significantly more to go and serve this model. So right now is a promotional time. So if you're still getting like the benefit. Very interestingly, they don't have versioned APIs. It's very easy. They're a quant firm. They're not like a product firm. So protecting API and versioning the previous one is not something that they know how to do. They just replaced the model on production. They YOLO'd it. Shout out to weights and biases. This is the reason why we have observability tools, folks. If you don't log and trace in production with something like our tooling, how would you know that your API changes on you behind the scenes? This is why we have the tooling. But definitely the pricing, though, for cached is going to go. Actually, I think the pricing for cache is still going to be very decent. So they still have caching. They're one of the first APIs that released prompt caching. It's still going to be very decent as well. Pricing, and I think comparable to Claude, maybe a little cheaper. Maybe a little cheaper than Claude.
Yeah, average right now on OpenRouter is 14 cents per million tokens of input, 28 cents per million tokens of output. Interestingly, on their API, they have limited context to 66K, and they have limited the output to 8K. And now I know they can do more than that, but you have to host it yourself, like if you really need that. And the last thing before we make 2 hours about DeepSeek, it's even with the older ones, when it comes to stuff like fill in the middle, or if you're using it as a tool with, for example, the Llama Vim plugin, which some people, I don't know why they use it. I use it. It's still like the best one. It's like better than 4.0 and Sonnet to like actually fill in reliably the middle parts of your code. Like if you say, hey, just add me this here, and it will do it without rambling other crap out. Like it will just like, do the thing. And it's like the best model for that.
DeepSeek Coder was still one of the best coding open source models that we had for a while. And like all of that is roped into like inside. I will say one thing that I want to call out before we kind of move on, and Wolfram, I want to hear if you have any concluding thoughts on this. The thing that they've called out, if you guys remember, we talked about R1, DeepSeek's like deep thought or reasoning kind of model. They used reasoning model in distillation for this model. So they used distillation from DeepSeek R1, chain of thought and creation of synthetic data to create data for this model. It's in the paper, and they literally call this out on their thread as well. And I think that they're not the only ones who are doing this. OpenAI and others. This is definitely what's going to happen. And we've seen this, and I think that this is a part of the snowball effect that we're all experiencing. And I think Karpathy called it out like a while ago. We're getting to these big models, and Llama 405B is getting distilled to 70 and then to 9B. So like all of these models, and DeepSeek called it out specifically in the paper, which for some reason I cannot load right now, but the distillation from the reasoning model, which are like longer thinking and specifically can create more synthetic data, was one of the secret recipes for this, besides a bunch of experts and besides the technical data, which there's a lot of. If you're into this, the amount of technical details that they shared in their paper is quite absolutely insane. Yeah, let's conclude on this. I think very exciting to get the best open source model. Wolfram, any last parting thoughts, instant parting thoughts on DeepSeek? Besides the fact that it's huge and we cannot basically run this on any Macs?
Yeah, I think we have to wait a bit until those effects trickle down so we can profit a lot on our local systems as well. But it's fair, and we have seen it time and again. You get something that you can't fully run locally, and the community picks it up and does their thing and optimizes it and distills it. And I'm sure this will be a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, I'll shout out a few
Big
more
applause.
evals super quick, just because we know evals are not super interesting, but still, human eval at 65%, MBPP at 75, live code bench at 19 compared to 15 and like DeepSeek at Llama base. Just an impressive model. Shout out to Well Bros, just dropping this like quietly and then releasing. Shout out to Well Bros. Let's cover, we're almost at 1 hour. Let's cover QVQ super quick because our friends from Qwen also dropped a model. Also a very interesting preview of something. It's a, yeah, Wolfram, I think you can introduce this one because I think you did the testing for this one, right?
Yeah, I have run 2 benchmark runs already, and it's still running.
You want to
Yeah,
introduce what it is and what they released before you start talking about benchmarks, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, sure. No,
Go ahead.
I can tell about it. It's a Qwen vision model combined with a 70. So it's a 72B vision model, multimodal. So it has vision and it has a reasoning components we've seen from QVQ, or how do they pronounce it?
Quill, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how the QVQ is pronounced, if that is the right pronunciation. But it's basically the same reasoning coupled with their vision layers on top of a model. So the basic model, it's a 72B preview model completely. And I think it's about 60 billion parameters for the language model part, and the rest is a vision part.
Yep. And let's see. Yeah, I added this to the top of the show, and also you did some evaluations as well. Very interestingly, this model is just reasons about the image, and it's really fun to see the reasoning as well. Again, compared to 01 and 03, the reasoning here is bare, and you can follow all of the reasoning outright. And the reasoning here about the vision is very interesting. I saw it achieve some things that I didn't see for Gemini thinking. Just to compare to, I don't know, the Gemini thinking reasoning model and the O1 reasoning model. Those are multimodal as well. The previous Qwen Quill, which was the reasoning model, that wasn't multimodal. That was just a text-based reasoning model. This one is a like vision reasoning model as well. So this thinks over images. What were your comparisons, Wolfram? What did you run it at? What did you land?
So I was doing the MMLU Pro computer science benchmarks only. So just next part. And I was doing it with the model. I quantized it down so I could run the benchmarks on the system I have with 48 gigabyte VRAM. So it is a 4.65 bits per byte model in Excel 2 format. So it has some fractional bits that way. So it's not the full model performance, just what I can run on my system. And there it was about 70B size model performance. So it got 70 points in the benchmark, which is not as good as a Quill model did when it was reasoning. So even although it's a bigger model now with the 72B or 60B language model, it still didn't achieve the same performance that we got with the smaller one, interestingly. But yeah, it has a visual capability, which is great. And somebody posted a screenshot in our chat of the podcast right here of some fried chicken and dogs. Don't know if you have seen it. So I ran it through the model and posted the results, not the reasoning, because that was screens of reasoning again. But it's interesting how well it could differentiate between the fried chicken and the dogs. So that is in the chat right here.
Yeah, I'll add this to the show notes as well. But yeah, this is now pinned to the top of the page. You basically see like buckets of fried chicken and what is it, like labradoodles or whatever, or golden labradoodles, and they pretty much seem the same in multiple pictures. Very interesting. And the title is "How to Confuse Machine Learning."
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it did a good job in that case. I haven't tried it with Claude, for example, but I will. But this is an interesting test, of course, to see how the model does it. Although I don't know if it can reason very well about these things. It's just a recognition thing, not just a riddle or something it has to solve. Yeah, to sum it up, I'm a bit disappointed actually because it didn't beat the smaller model. I was actually hoping that it would achieve a new high score in this test. But yeah, I have to do more tests with the visual parts to see because it's a unique model. That's truly the first one I know of where you have a reasoning model combined with a visual part. That alone is a new achievement, and I'm very happy that we have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also just the preview still. So the folks from Qwen are saying that this is like a research preview, and it still has limitations like everything.
Yeah, that reminds me of one controversy. I don't know if we can call it that way. So it was released with the Apache 2 license, and they re-licensed it. So they changed the license retroactively to the Qwen license. So maybe it was a mistake.
Ooh.
Who knows? But if you got it with the old one, then yeah, that license, you can't just change the license, of course. If you downloaded the weights with the old license, yeah, you already have the old license and can use it. So the one I uploaded that has the Apache license, and there were other quants. So some have the Apache license, some the Qwen license. You have to check that if you use it. So that was a bit strange move. Not a big fan of the more restrictive licenses, of course, but if that is what they need or have to do, so be it.
As long as we're getting the models, but yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
We usually like the other side. We usually like the opening up the models, not the other way around.
Yes.
Yeah.
By the way, can someone find the subway example, like the metro example? Because I thought,
What was the metro example?
oh, this was the coolest by far. So someone just was on the New York subway, and they just posted a picture inside it, and they just says, "Should I get off at this station next?" And
I
should I
saw
get
this.
off at Chinatown?
Yeah.
And it
Cocktail
started.
peanut.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's cocktail peanut. Oh,
Yes.
it's our friends. Yeah. This was
Listen,
the
give a
coolest
recap.
part.
Give a recap to folks who are like coming in from the middle of this context.
Yeah, cocktail peanut actually makes Python apps not horrible anymore. Like they're like the best packaging tool of making UIs and environments and stuff for Python apps. And
Pinocchio.computer.
yes.
If you want to download like cool like Python-y things, but you don't know Python, Pinocchio.computer is going to be like a godsend. Cocktail Peanut is the creator of that app, and then he ran QVQ on like this. You want to pin this to the top of the space? You want me to find it while you explain?
I'm trying to find it as well.
Okay.
But okay, yeah, I found it. And because I felt the same way with the model on certain things, it was super impressive, but it also seemed it's still pretty early at this thing. And keep in mind, this is not Qwen 2.5. This is the slightly older Qwen 2, which wasn't a bad model or anything. But yeah, so someone they asked them to should I get off on the subway, and they said first off the interior, and I'll read it because it's actually super cool. And it says first off, the interior of the subway car is empty, which is a bit unusual. But maybe it's late at night. It's just a quiet time. The seats are orange and yellow, and there are poles running down the middle of the car for passengers to hold on to. The floor looks clean, and there are various advertisements and signs posted inside. Looking at the signs, I see one that says NYC Care with some text in Chinese, which might be promoting healthcare services in New York City, possibly targeting the Chinese community. There's also a sign that says Canal Street with a number 6 inside a green circle, indicating that this is the 6th train and we're approaching Canal Street Station. Now, I know that Chinatown is located near Canal Street in Manhattan, so this could be a relevant stop for me. But I should make sure I don't want to miss my destination. Let me think about the subway lines in NYC. The 6th train runs from Pelham Bay Park in the Bronx down to Brooklyn Bridge City Hall in Manhattan. Since I'm on the 6th train headed to Manhattan, the sign says Canal Street, which is in Chinatown, it seems like I'm on the right track. But isn't that amazing?
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Like, yeah. It takes the first person perspective of somebody who writes this and does all this math, and it is crazy.
Yeah, guys, just read it. It's pretty. That's what blew me away.
That's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. We're going to talk about crazier stuff, but definitely give Qwen QVQ a try. It's the reasoning through is very interesting. I gave it a very simple. I have this new visual riddle that I found somewhere. It's 3 kids sitting in a school bus on a curvy road. And the question is, which way is the bus moving? And the answer is to the left. And the reasoning behind this is because you don't see the doors on the bus and you don't see the driver, but like the reasoning there is where the doors is on the other side, then because of that, if the bus drives on the right side of the road, then it's going left. But like I gave it to Gemini thinking, and Gemini didn't immediately get it, and got it afterwards. I got a little bit more context, and this reasoning model actually got it after I provided like the buses in the US. So it's very interesting, the reasoning as you can see it. O1 got it immediately, and I think that O1 has it in its training data, the specific question. But very interesting reasoning model from Qwen, and shout out to them. Folks, let's move on because we have a bunch of other stuff to talk about, and we're an hour into this, and it looks like we may go over an hour because we still didn't get to the recap. So huge open source news. Qwen, QVQ, and DeepSeek are like two huge models to the end of the year for us, and I think it's time for us to do a little bit of a, I guess we're doing a reset. So everybody who's here, we have over 100 folks now listening. This is ThursdAI. You're on ThursdAI, which is a weekly AI show. I'll do a reset, and in the middle of ThursdAI, as always, we do a corner that's called This Week's Buzz, and this one's going to be quick. I'm going to be quick with it, but in this one is. We have some comments from other folks as well. This one's going to be very quick, but the show is sponsored by Weights and Biases. The show is promoted by Weights and Biases, obviously. If you're here on the space and you see the square co-host here called Weave is Weights and Biases tool for LLM observability. And so every time on ThursdAI, in the middle of the show, we do a small corner called With This Week's Buzz, where we update you on everything Weights and Biases related. So let's do that. Let's dive into our This Week's Buzz corner. All right, so welcome to This Week's Buzz, the corner where we talk about everything, or I guess I cover everything that happened in and Biases for this week. And actually, this is a future-looking corner where I'm going to update you about everything that is going to happen in January. 3 things that are going to happen in January. One of them I'm going to add to the top of the space right now. You are, guys, among of the first to be invited to our exciting new free course about LLM evaluation. So Weave, as I told you just about now, Weave is our LLM observability and evaluation tool. Like I said before, and I love to connect to the things that we talk about on the AI, if you're using DeepSeek, let's say API on production, and DeepSeek went and changed their API behind the scenes for you, and you use their API and you're expecting some model and then this another model, and for some reason it performs better, you're like, oh, that's incredible. How would you know? Not only that, they're about to change prices. Let's say that one developer that used to work for your company added this DeepSeek API, and then they change prices for you. How would you know? All of that is known by you can achieve all of that knowing by using observability, and this is what Weave lets you do. It's a free tool, free to get started tool called Weave. It's 3 lines of Python code to get started. You get started with 1 line, actually. We're very proud of this tool. It's been improving like crazy for the past year. Honestly, when I joined, we didn't have this last year, and since then I've seen just an incredible amount of innovation in this tool. I've been showing this a while also on the video versions of ThursdAI, and as we're building this tool, many companies talk to Weights and Biases about their evaluation needs and how they evaluate, etc. And we're also looking into different methods of evaluation. And we are releasing a free course on everything that we've learned about evaluation. And this course, you're invited to check it out. I added this to the top of the page. It's evaluation together with Paige Bailey from Google and with Graham Newbig from All Hands AI. This is an awesome course. I was participant in. I was looking into the folks who are building this. It's again free to do, and you can pre-register right now. You're the first folks. We haven't published this course yet. Our previous course about advanced RAG apps, like an insane amount of people just pre-registered and loved it. I'm sure that you guys are going to enjoy. We're offering this for free in our Weights and Biases Academy. One thing that I will call out is that at some point somebody found me on one of the events that I'm going to and said, "Hey, you're from Weights and Biases?" Yes. I was like, "Yes." He's like, "You guys are the courses company, right?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You are the company who does the free courses." I was like, "Yes, but we also have this multi-billion-dollar business in machine learning experiments and observability. It was really funny that somebody found me and they thought that all we do is courses. So we have also a free courses platform, and this is the new upcoming course, and I really want you to know about this and try this and give it a shot and pre-register. It's coming out in January. The other two things that I wanted to tell you about is our in-person meetups, one in San Francisco on Saturday, January 11th, and one in Seattle on Monday, January 13th. Both of them I'm going to be there for both of them. Those will be focused on evaluations. If you're in one of them, the Saturday one will be hands-on evaluations for your business, for your startup, etc. Just come to our Weights and Biases office. We're going to sit with you. We're going to try to brainstorm together. Evaluation is going to be like a hack day. No prizes, no competition, not a hackathon. Just come and we're going to brainstorm together. You can just work on your evaluations, etc. And the workshop, I'm going to give a workshop with ThursdAI together in Seattle on Monday, January 13th. So if you're there, I'm going to post the details afterwards on ThursdAI, but just follow my feed and hopefully we'll see you there as well. Actually, I'm going to add this link as well to the show notes. So these are the updates from this week's Buzz, and that's basically it. I don't have much else to say besides a huge thanks to Weights and Biases for allowing the show to happen this whole year, and to Weave for co-hosting the show. And now I think we're moving on to the huge news from last week's Friday, which is O3. And I think it's time. We talked about O3 when it was released, but I think it's time to take a little second and I don't know, appreciate how insane the Friday release was. Now that we're back in the space and like all of us in the space, can you guys, I don't know, give an emoji reaction of your kind of, I don't know, vibes check after O3 was released? Let's do like a AGI, not AGI moment. Let's do like a thumbs up if you think O3 is like approaching AGI, and thumbs down if it's not AGI. Let's do that. How about that, folks, in the audience, in the space? I'm thinking yes, but I want to see some emoji reactions from folks. I'm saying like some thumbs up. I see Bartowski giving thumbs up. So let me do a recap for folks who are like just tuning into the show, and all of them are like, all of the news they're getting is only from the show. Let's do a small recap. On Friday, the last of the 12 days of OpenAI's releases, OpenAI promised they're going to go out with a big one, and they did. They announced evaluations for their new frontier model called O3, frontier reasoning model called O3. The reason why they didn't call it O2 is because they didn't want to get into a legal battle, another one with, I think, Telefonica, Wolfram, is that right? Is that the company?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, with Telefonica, with the O2 brand name, O2 Arena, etc. in London. They didn't want to get into a legal battle for the brand name O2, so they just skipped one and said, all right, we're going to call this O3. Based on just the jump in the capabilities, it might as well have been like the next two generations of the model, because they completely blew everyone away with the evaluations and the kind of the expectations of what we would expect for the next frontier model of reasoning, based on just how recent O1 was. O1 was announced back in October this year, and we got access to O1 a couple of months ago, and O1 Pro, O1 left preview just the week before, like 2 weeks before. So O1 left preview like in the beginning of the 12 days of OpenAI releases, and then O3 was announced at the end of the 12 days releases. The difference between those two models is just absolutely insane. So in the span of 3 months, OpenAI jumped a ridiculous amount of evaluations. I will just talk about the ridiculous amounts. The highlight of O1's release back when they released it in October was AIME, so competition math. This is notoriously hard for LLMs to do with next token predictions, and so reasoning models, i.e. models that do test time compute or inference time compute, models that reason, like we talked with QVQ, those are better at competition math. O1 preview got 56.7% on AIME 2024. When they got O1 out of preview, they said that O1 gets 83%. And then when they previewed O3, they basically saturated this competition math. It got 96.7%. So basically, it didn't answer just like 1 or 2 questions on the competition math out of 100. It's absolutely mind-blowingly insane. On GPQA Diamond, which GPQA Diamond is maybe one of the hardest benchmarks for knowledge, and we talk about this in LLMs and open source LLMs. It's basically, it's not reasoning necessarily, it's also reasoning with knowledge. GPQA stands for Google Proof Q&A. This is a PhD level science questions where the average PhD expert in the field of this question, right? If you think about, you're going to university, there's the PhD there, they work their whole life in this topic. That person, the average of PhD subject matter expert in this topic of the question, the average is 85%. The average of a PhD in the topic of the question gets every 85%. O1 preview got 78. O1 got 78 as well. Actually, O1 got a little bit less than O1 preview, interestingly. O3 got 87.7. O3 beat the human benchmark for PhD level science questions for expert PhDs in the topic of the question. And I'm hoping that my excitement and astonishment and mind-blowingness comes through the microphone as much as it should. Because again, this is the moment where AI breaks through and takes over specific knowledge. Wolfram, go ahead.
Yeah, isn't that exactly what they mean when they say AGI? So that you can do the economically viable human work or stuff like that. So that you are on the level of an expert in the field. That would be my interpretation. So in that regard, they have achieved it in this difficult benchmark and some others like we've seen. So I wouldn't call it AGI by itself yet, but it's clearly the right way and an important aspect. When you put it in an agent and so on, you can achieve a lot, I think, with this model.
Absolutely. So GPK Diamond is absolutely crazy, like the jump there. Nistan, you want to comment on this before we move on to the next evals, and then we're going to talk about implications of this whole thing? It's crazy.
I've been saying for a while that Aider and GPQA Diamonds are like the two benchmarks that closest reflect also the vibe checks from people as well, which is like vibe checking the model is pretty important. Okay, it's actually it often tends to be more accurate than now what most benches say. So that's now, with that aside, we have to keep in mind that in order to prove this hypothesis that you can make an LLM be as smart as the average human worker, you also need to have a control, and also people can criticize it, which is like what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
So, like at the end of the day, as hard as GPQ Diamond is, it gets graduate. It's like multi-step, graduate level questions. Think of like the Martian railgun launcher stuff that I do, but more for like chemistry or other like more formal grad school stuff. But at the end of the day, is just picking like A, B, C, D. It's just picking like the right answer. It might be possible that for even a small model, if you just run it long enough, and if it just guesses enough options, it doesn't have a whole lot to reach in the end. Like it's just got to reach A, B, C, D. If you run that reasoning long enough, you might get there. So I'm worried that we're not yet at something that's like an actual good indicator. Like if you had like a bad report from a power plant and a whole bunch of stuff went wrong or it needs to be redone, I don't think any of the models today are good enough to actually make the construction planning for that. Wait,
let's keep going because I agree with you. Like this one specific one with the multiple choice may not necessarily represent, but there's more. On the software engineering Sweetbench Verified, we've been focusing on Sweetbench Verified as one of kind of the also gut checks of like how well a model could actually solve coding issues. Sweetbench Verified is a collection of GitHub issues in real world scenarios that a model can go and solve. This is the highest score of Sweetbench Verified that we've seen at 71.7, and the highest jump that we've seen from the previous model from 48.9 for O1 to 71.7 for O3. This is like an insane jump from 48.9 to 71.7 in Sweetbench. So it basically solves 70% of the software engineering tasks in the real world for Sweetbench Verified, which is like the harder version of Sweetbench. And also, one of the craziest one is the competition code for code forces. This is also like state-of-the-art achievement in ELO score of 2727 compared to 1800 for O1. Now, these metrics are like just like absolute state of the art in every metric. There's no model that comes any close to any of these models in these metrics. The only one that could come close is pipelines that are not models. This is essentially a model that's thinking, so it's really hard. The line is very blurry between what's a pipeline, what's a model, because these are models that think at inference time compute when compute is provided. But I think that the hugest brain fuck or what the fuck moment happened when Greg Comrade, the president of ArcAGI, came on the stage. Very interestingly, friend of the pod, by the way, he was here with us multiple times, I think, on the pod, and I covered like Dev Day together with Greg, interviewed him there. He was a judge at the Weights and Biases Hackathon as well. Great guy. I emailed Greg, or I DM'd Greg before the show, and I was like, hey, Greg, you want to come and see the last release together? I did not know he's going to be on the actual live stream we're going to watch. Greg comes and talks about ArcAGI. ArcAGI is an eval, a very hard eval that was created by Francois Chalet. It's a visual thing that's easy for humans and hard for LLMs to do. And the previous scores for ArcAGI were very low. For example, O1 Mini gets 8%, O1 Preview gets 13% on that ArcAGI thing. The newly released O1 gets 25 and 31% on this ArcAGI. O3 gets, on the low effort, 75.7%, and on the high effort, 87.5%, effectively beating the ArcAGI test. It's called ArcAGI for the reason of when it was created, the assumption was if anything beats this, it's AGI. Since then, as always, the goalposts of what AGI is and isn't moves all the time. So now it's no longer the test for AGI anymore. But just the absolute insanity of 87.5% on this very hard task for models to do is just like absolutely broke people's brains everywhere. And then there's a whole thing with our very friendly naysayer Gary Marcus in our field that's saying, hey, they tested they trained on the train set, and people saying they didn't train on the train test. The train set. I don't want to get into this all too much. Wolfram, maybe you want to recover this or like maybe comment on this.
This is exactly what I wanted to say. But there's a funny thing, because that's what the training data set is for, to train on it.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is also that they said it's just a small fraction. It's a general model. It's not specifically for the ARC challenge. So they didn't focus on that. They just put that training set into their complete set.
Yep.
And it just did it. So it's not one tightly optimized model just for one purpose. It's still a general model, and it just got smarter. Of course, it was very costly, considering what it costs to run this benchmark. So economically viable is still something that has to be discussed about AGI. But it's possible, and it will get cheaper, of course. Yeah.
So we should talk about this specifically, because on this chart of the ArcAGI private eval chart, there's 2 points for O3. One of them is at 75.7 and one of them is 87.5. And the difference between those is how much compute they gave the model and how much time they gave the model. In reasoning models, we talked about this. I want to highlight this for folks who are listening for the first time maybe. We are now witnessing a new scaling law. The scaling law is called test time compute, or aka inference time compute, and this basically was suggested before, and we're seeing the kind of the proofs for this law, where the longer you give a model to think, or the more compute you give a model, or basically the better, very predictably better you get at getting results from these models. And we've seen this with O1, and now we see this with O3. We saw this with R1 from DeepSeek. We saw this with Qwen Quill as well. So we have confirmations that this is a new scaling law where basically no longer just during trainings are the model getting better at answers. It's also the more time you give them to think, the better they are at answers. And how much better is that difference in ArcAGI between 75.7% and 87.5% is the difference between, I think, like $200 a task and over $1,000 per task, or something like this. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but as far as I remember, and this can confirm if I'm wrong, or folks in the comments, the whole ArcAGI cost them around $1 million, which is more than the price itself. ArcAGI has a price. If you beat ArcAGI, you get like $1 million or something. The money it costs OpenAI to test on Arc in terms of compute costs more than the price itself, which is very funny. Go ahead, Nissan.
Yeah, I don't think they cheated on Arc. The benchmark's been around for 5 years, and there's been a big price to it, and it's pretty hard to cheat it. I don't think that's what happened, but I am.
Wait, just confirm.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I heard you right. You don't think they cheated or achieved it? I couldn't hear the right thing.
No, I don't think they cheated or whatever. The training said. Like, that's a pretty hard, solid benchmark that's been proven for 5 years straight, and with a price. And yeah, so if people were cheating on it, we would know long before. So we would have found out how. I just want to say that in the end, my opinionated take on this is that this is not one model. It's like, in some ways, is just trying to get multiple models to emulate the rumble that people go through when trying to do something new, where they just keep prompting it over and then just dumping that in and saying, oh, did this work or not? And then 4 or 5 hours later, maybe like that thing will actually work in the end. And that used to also be the case with GPT 3.5. Like, you just throw stuff at it, and then eventually it might hit the right answer. So in this way, like, they're using larger model, then it's like the smaller model is constantly trying to evaluate it. So in a way, it's like an intelligent brute forcing its way to a multiple choice answer. And personally, I don't really consider that AGI, but that's just me.
So on this topic, I want to add a friend who listened to the show and posted this, Paul Calcraft, added a note. I'm going to add this to the top of the space, where O3 is not MCTS, so it's not Monte Carlo tree search. So you can technically get to a level of searching through a space of answers, and we saw this with news research. Forge, for example, we talked about this. They can achieve competition math answers as well with longer thinking, longer processing, with Monte Carlo tree search, and you can like do algorithmic search with LLMs as well. You can do this with pipelines, but this is a model that was scaled up. And the blurry lines between what's a model, what's a pipeline are blurry, because like, this is a model that's thinking, but they aren't doing this with MCTS. They're not doing this with, MCTS, yes. They're doing this with like just a scale-up RL reasoning models. Like they've confirmed this, like an auto-regression model. So whether or not this is AGI, that's a different point. I saw from the information today, I don't have access to the information, maybe I should, but from the information today, apparently, because Microsoft and OpenAI has an agreement on specifically where, if I remember correctly, and maybe folks can correct me if I'm wrong, the point at which OpenAI is no longer beholden to Microsoft is after they achieved AGI or something like this. From something like that, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly,
that point cannot be vague. You expect it to be vague on a multi-billion-dollar company, but the shrewd CEO, that's what the information said. Basically, there's a very specific definition from the information what AGI means in that kind of legal binding for billions and billions of dollars. And that definition it's a very specific, unachievable, and we didn't get there yet from that perspective. So that AGI has not been achieved by O3. So very interesting. Another thing I wanted to call out, Wolfram, before I want to continue, you want to comment on some of the stuff that we just mentioned more, and some folks in the comments as well?
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me right now, but there was this collaboration where they are sharing what they are doing technically with Microsoft, and once they achieve AGI, I think then that ends and they don't have to share it with Microsoft anymore or something like that. So that was one thing. And I was also critical at first of them, thinking that maybe their reasoning models are a pipeline or something, not just a simple LLM in that way, or multimodal model. But yeah, they have said again and again that it is just an LLM, just a model. So yeah, if we believe them, we can check it for ourselves. Then apparently it's still just one model doing all this almost magical stuff.
Just crazy
two.
magical.
It's two. There's a big one and a small one. It's always been like that. Like, I don't think it's MCT and stuff like MCT is pretty bad. It's always been at least two models. I don't. That's not just one model. Like, they have one big uncensored one, and then they have the smaller LLM like actually taking those whatever reasoning steps are happening.
Oh, and obfuscating for us.
This was never one model.
No, but like the obfuscation happens for us, for the users. Like the O3 and O1 are models, just one model. Obfuscation happens so we don't see the actual train of thought and don't train on it. But that's not part of
I
the
always
thinking.
had it as multiple models. Even Sam Altman said they have the uncensored one, and then they have the smaller model doing the evaluations, and then like injecting stuff, and then like restarting the whole thing. Like it's more like an ecosystem. But okay, like we could get this correctly.
I got
after,
confirmation before. I asked when O1 was released, and I was directly answered by OpenAI folks that this is a model, not a pipeline of models, not a pipeline in the sense of a pipeline. And also there is a confirmation on top from Rune and some other folks as well from OpenAI. Let me move on to this next thing that I wanted to talk about, frontier math. You guys remember frontier math? We talked about frontier math. Frontier, let me find this, frontier math. It was released by Epoch AI as a couple of months ago. Epoch AI released this like very hard benchmark that's called frontier math, where at the time where they released it, the best possible score that any LLM achieved on it was 2%. And when they released it, they were like, "Ta-da! We're excited to release frontier math. The next frontier in evaluation needs very hard math, ta-da! Because GSM 8K and other like math benchmark were saturated. We're releasing this one, the evaluation that's going to hold us on for a while for the next one. And at the moment of releasing, the best LLM is solving only 2% of the problems on frontier math. And then they've added like a bunch of folks on frontier math that they're talking about how difficult those models are." And O3 solved 25% of frontier math. And those questions are super challenging. They cited like math Olympiads talking about how challenging frontier math are. And those are not like just selecting questions. That you need to prove those are verifiable math questions, but you have to prove like how you got there. O3 just solved 25% of those. And Noam Brown, the guy who basically, I think one of the core researchers for the reasoning models, and I think he's credited by running for the past 2 years. He says, "This is the result I'm most excited about. LLMs are dumb in some ways. Saturating evals like frontier math would suggest AI surpassing top human intelligence in certain domains. When that happens, we may see a broad acceleration in scientific research." So that was very exciting to see. And I specifically on this one, I was like, my head was blown on this one thing specifically. In addition to O3, by the way, the last thing that I want to cover here, OpenAI talked about O3 Mini. And the thing about O3 Mini is that like many people just focused on O3 and the evaluations. I focused on O3 Mini because the evaluations they added for O3 Mini are also mind-boggling, because they talked about they're going to release O3 Mini by end of January probably, and O3 Mini is going to be much faster and cheaper than O1 that we have access to now. But in most benchmarks, O3 Mini is going to beat O1. Not only is the next frontier model significantly better than the previous frontier model 3 months into this, which again, I want to focus on what I'm saying. And I want to if you're not listening, if Alex is droning on in the background, just focus on me for a second. After 3 months, OpenAI is jumping in capabilities in an unprecedented sense, and there's no reason for them to stop. We haven't seen the scaling laws. There's a bunch of tricks more. They will probably continue to improve in this reasoning sense. But not only do we get a new model that's significantly better than previous model 3 months afterwards, not a year, not 2 years like previously, 3 months afterwards, the next distilled smaller model, the O3 Mini, is matching the previous top model in most capabilities. In fact, O3 Mini also accepts 3 reasoning efforts settings. So you as a developer could provide O3 Mini as low, medium, and high reasoning efforts. And on the high reasoning efforts, it beats O1 in multiple benchmarks as well, while being cheaper and faster, significantly cheaper and faster. So the next reasoning model is going to be very performant. The next workhorse of reasoning is going to be O3 Mini, and it's going to beat O1 from right now, and that's going to happen in less than a month. I found that to be absolutely ridiculous in just the pure sense of jumping in capabilities, because O1 now for coding is absolutely insane, but it's slow, and many people don't use it for coding because it's slow and it's slower. So that O3 Mini, for me, was just mind-blowing. Want to welcome LDJ to the stage. LDJ, we covered O3 pretty much all over. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this as well, and then Wolfram.
Yeah, it caught me by surprise, caught a lot of people by surprise. Did you cover some of the misconceptions around the cost of O3 Full?
No, let's talk about the cost.
Yeah, so I think there was like a little bit of misconceptions because people saw on ArcAGI it said like $2,000 spent on certain tasks and things like that. But I think it's worth clarifying now specifically because they had it literally run like over 1,000 attempts per task, and then you get like that crazy high cost through that. But if you actually break down the token spent and the cost and everything that they log for ArcAGI, it actually equals the same $60 per million tokens as O1 output. So it seems at least if the ArcAGI numbers are correct, O3 is actually same cost per token as O1 full.
Really? I didn't know this.
Mhm.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. All right.
But I guess a small caveat that it'll spend a little bit more tokens though. So if it spends double or triple the tokens per chain of thought, then you're going to end up spending maybe double or triple for O3 versus O1 on that same question.
Yep. Alrighty, folks. I think this was it for O3. I think we're moving on. O3 beat ArcAGI, and this is like the crazy on semi-private eval. The other big news in big companies is XAI raising Series C of $6 billion with ASICs and BlackRock Fidelity, like a bunch of... It's really funny when a funding round has Sequoia at like number 8. It's really funny. But basically, they raised another $6 billion. They're well on their way for a supercluster with 200,000 H200s overall capacity. And I think all of them are going to be in this Memphis supercluster in one supercluster, which is going to be absolutely insane. Just absolutely insane. It's just mind-boggling of a jump. Yeah, I think that this is the big company's setup, and I think that we have a little bit of time to... Yeah, Wolfgang, go ahead.
Just one thing. Someone mentioned in the comments here as well, because we discussed it last week, but Google has their own reasoning model. We looked at it before, but it's interesting that I didn't see much talk about this. O1 or 3 got all the news time, but I haven't even run a benchmark myself because the API is rate limited me. But for some reason, there's not much talk about what Google is offering in this arena right now.
Yeah, we covered this a little bit when it came out, if you guys remember, live on the show. I did some evals, and the highlight for me was from Gemini Thinking is that it's fast, and it was matching O1 on the subset of questions that I got from the ones that we often run from Simple Bench. It matched O1 at like half of the questions that it answered. It was very interesting to see. But the speed with which it did was crazy. So last week on the show, like I showed the O3 reasoning efforts comparison. I think the thinking came out a day after, and I did the comparison, and the speed that Google has is significantly faster than O1. I think even O1 Mini, definitely than O1. And I think that Google is coming for the thinking as well. That's for damn sure. They're not going to leave this area for OpenAI for long.
They are doing so many experimental models. Maybe it could be that it's too much because they throw them out all the time, and there's not much information about them. So yeah, it's a bit weird. Maybe some oversaturation or something. I don't know.
Yep. Alrighty, folks. I think that we're at time for basically the coverage of the news for this week. Let's talk about the rest of the stuff that we want to cover. O3, XAI. The other things that I wanted to mention is basically Google's recap of the crazy stuff. By the way, this is great that you brought it up. Let's finish up with the other stuff that they released. Just in the Google's recap of the stuff that they released, Imagen 3, VO2 for video, and Genie 2 for interactive world models. Gemini 2 Flash was like a very big release from Google, and then Gemini Experimental we're still trying to figure out what Gemini Experimental 1206 is. Is that Gemini 2 Ultra or not? That's unclear. And then 2.0 Flash Thinking, that's the reasoning model from Google, the first one. Noam, I forgot his last name, from somebody remind me, from Transformers.
Oh, Noam Shazir.
Noam Shazir, thank you. Noam Shazir, who came back to Google from Character AI, he posted about the thinking first. So it looks like that's the guy behind the thinking effort, and potentially there's a lot more to be coming from the thinking still. And that's only the Flash thinking, right? Like we may get Gemini Ultra thinking or something, and that could be like significant as well. And also some other things that they released, like Project Astra and Project Mariner, etc. So definitely a bunch of releases from Google for the quarter as well. In vision and video, there's not a lot for this week, but definitely it was a crazy year. So we're going to cover this in the year. But Kling released a new update. And then I wanted to cover Hume Octave, the $3 billion speech language model. It just sounded super cool to me. And I think that I can play a voice. Let me see if you guys can hear this. Let me know if you guys can hear this.
Introducing Octave.
The thing about superintelligence is that it will be different.
Can you guys hear this?
Qualitatively.
So this is an input. This is Ilya Satskover talking.
From what we have.
In Europe's 2024, so like this 2 weeks ago.
And in particular, it's going to be qualitatively different.
And now this is
in
Octave.
the sense that the goals and values of the superintelligent agents will be fundamentally different than our own.
Thank you, Ilya, for that insight.
And then,
do you think it's important that we build empathy into AI?
I think that's an important part of building AI. If you're building something that you hope will become sentient, then you should try to put in some things that would lead towards it becoming more human.
And basically their example is very similar to Notebook LM and how you can interact with the hosts. Not only does it clone Ilya, it basically says that like it takes over the personality somehow with this new Octave thing. And they have a few more examples. So they literally just cloned the Notebook LM demo. You guys listen to this. This is the input. This is Notebook LM.
Delicious for sure, but good for you.
Get ready for some surprises because these spuds are way more interesting than
So this is the input, and now this is their model.
Let's jump in and see what makes potatoes so good for us.
First of all, it's important to remember that just like with anything else, potatoes contain
The City A.
I find it like pretty crazy. They talk about less than 300 milliseconds of voice generation, and they also create voices with prompts like Scholarly Wizard Mentor. They create this voice, very similar to 11 Labs voice creation. They can like give a prompt and create a voice from the prompt.
Young apprentice, the ancient scrolls speak of a power most extraordinary. Do you dare to wield it?
So this is a generation of a voice with a personality and accent and expressions, and like all of this happened with less than 300 milliseconds. I found it super cool. And the cloning time, it takes less than 5 seconds of clone. So OpenAI sent a voice. This is OpenAI sent a voice.
Can you tell me the story of the night before Christmas, but say it like Gen Z?
Oh, all right. Let's try this. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and
this
the
is
vibes
input.
were calm. But then a loud
This
bang
is theirs.
came crashing down the chimney, waking up the whole town.
This is pretty damn good, folks. And I think I'm bringing this because in my predictions from last year, I was waiting for a model like this. This didn't release. They didn't release this yet, but I was waiting for a model like this to drop, and I thought that like after elections, when people will relax with the deepfakes and everything, a model like this will actually drop. But with 5 snippets of an audio, they can clone this audio with very simple things. And this is also an LLM. So this is a 3 billion parameter LLM that has MMLU and Common Sense QA. It has like percentages in it and Arc Easy. This is an actual evaluated LLM on top of being an audio model as well. I found it super cool. I want to add this to the top of the show. Folks, what do you think about this one? Wolfram, I saw you react to this. Did you hear some examples of it?
Yeah, I've been following stuff like that for a while because I have used XTTS v2 for my local assistant to talk to her and give her a voice and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was all over the 11 Labs stuff where you can create your own voice as a prompt. So that summarizes or the Notebook LLM stuff, Notebook LM. So this is a combination of a lot of interesting things all culminating in one model. And of course, I would love to have something like that locally, and the size, you could run it locally with the 3 billion parameters. Yeah, I hope we get something like that to play with around locally.
Yeah, I've asked for this. Alan Qwen is the CEO of Hume, and I asked him any plans for open source. And he says, what cases do you envision open source? But he said, basically, problem with open source, anyone could create a super convincing replica of you instantly, use it to call your family members, your bank, beyond anything currently available. Folks who are listening to ThursdAI, we said this last year. We're going to say this today. We're going to keep saying this. If you and your family don't have a safe word yet, where somebody calls you from a number, claims to be your family, and talks to you, get a safe word now. Talk about them. Use you're in Christmas with your family, whatever. Get a safe word to make sure that if a person from your family comes from a weird phone and says, hey, I need $200 to get out of jail or whatever, you have to have a safe word with your family, because your voice can be cloned for 5 seconds. And regardless of whether or not this technology is open source, it already can happen. This is my answer basically to Alan Cohen's, if they open source it, this can happen more. It can already happen, and it could have happened a year ago as well. And basically, the only answer right now is trust the sources. So hopefully nobody can simjack, or it's not going to worth being simjacking your mom. But basically, you need to have a very strong way to prove that you and your family are who you say you are. Alrighty, folks, we've covered all of the news from this week. And then we kept talking for another hour and a half. However, I'm not Lex Friedman to release 3-hour podcasts. And so I will release that part as a separate bonus episode in the coming days. So look forward for that. In there, we will do a full recap of a year of AI releases. We went back, looked at all ThursdAIs for the past year, all 49 of them, every week, and did a recap of every major thing that was released during this year. We also looked back at our predictions from the last episode of ThursdAI from the year 2023. Our predictions looking at this year. And it was very interesting to see our predictions compared to reality, where we missed, where we got them right. And we also did some predictions for next year. So that was a very interesting conversation. Look forward for that in your podcasts in the upcoming days, as I'm going to work on that next. Meanwhile, I really appreciate you listening to all of this. If you find this helpful in any way, just remember that the best way to support this podcast is, well, obviously check out Weave, but also share it with your friend and give us a 5-star rating in whatever you get your podcast. It really helps for discovery. Meanwhile, my name is Alex Volkov, as you all know. Thank you for tuning in, and look forward for that bonus episode soon. And happy holidays and happy new year.